Ian Castleberry, good day. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Woo, good, man. We got a lot to get to. And, of course, Ian Castleberry writes for awfulannouncing.com, also thecomeback.com. He keeps busy and also finds time to talk to us in Radioland as well. And we're talking Major League Baseball, presented today, as always, by Happy Hill Restaurant. All right, Ian, first things first, the Braves do get the win. They knock off Milwaukee. They shut out the Brewers 3-0. Jock Peterson, you know what? I like this trade when they got him from Chicago, Ian. He pulled through hard for the Bravos today.
He did. I mean, that's why they got Jock Peterson. They needed some punch in their outfield after losing Ronald Acuna and Marcelo Zuna. Peterson is a limited player in terms of maybe not great against left-handers, but for the role the Braves are putting him in, he provides pop when they needed it, and he obviously hit a huge home run today.
Indeed, he did. Braves go up 2-1 in that series. Oh, by the way, so now they're up 2-1. How do you feel about Atlanta wrapping this up tomorrow, Ian?
I feel very good about Atlanta's chances here. I mean, they've pitched very well as long as they're keeping the Brewers' offense in check and just keeping it low until, one of their big bats comes through. And they've been able to do that throughout this series. I mean, they haven't put up a huge number of runs, but 3 runs when you don't allow any is plenty. We'll see what the pitching matchup is for Game 4. I think that's a little bit of a question mark for the Braves. I don't know if they can come back with Charlie Morton on shorter rest or if they have to go with somebody like Drew Smyly. That might be what determines this series. But the Brewers don't have a great rotation other than they're 3 deep either. So in Game 4, maybe you have to look at the Brewers having a slight advantage with the pitching. But if the Brewers can't score any runs, which they really haven't in this series, then Atlanta's going to be fine.
And by the way, Ian, as you know, the Astros and White Sox has been postponed. The White Sox routing the Astros in game number 3 in Chicago to stave off elimination. I was going to ask you how, the bats keeping up and all of that good stuff, in pace in game 4 with the White Sox. Can they do this again? We're going to have to find out tomorrow. That game has been postponed, but not before there's a little drama. There's a lot of drama going on in the playoffs right now, but the big one here is Astros manager Dusty Baker pushing back on the White Sox reliever Ryan Tepera's comments regarding potential sign stealing by the Astros, calling them heavy accusations. Okay, well, what does that mean? You either did it or you didn't do it, Dusty. It feels to me like he's kind of brushing this off. We all know the history of the Astros and sign stealing, right, Ian? Maybe this is part of the organization because Cora's not here anymore. But what do you make of Dusty's comments and, of course, the accusation by the White Sox?
Well, Dusty is going to brush it off. I mean, he didn't outright deny it, I suppose. But this is just something that the Astros are going to have to deal with. And Tepera, he opened that door. The fact that the White Sox didn't score very many runs in the first 2 games at Minute Maid Park, and then they explode for 12 runs when it goes to Progressive Field? I can't even remember what the White Sox park
I can't remember. I thought it was U.S. Cellular for a while.
It was U.S. Cellular. I think I'm going to call it Comiskey for the purposes of this segment.
Excellent. Roll.
Going back to Comiskey Park and scoring 12 runs, that raises the question, gee, how come the Astros weren't putting up big runs if they didn't know what was coming? This is something that the Astros are just going to have to beat. If they do end up winning the World Series here, and I think you could make the argument on paper that the Astros are better than the White Sox in this series, but I think Tepera throwing that out there certainly creates the suspicion. It gives the umpire something to look at. It raises suspicions. It causes the dreaded D-word distraction when Dusty Baker are interviewed. But I think for Game 4, it looks good for the White Sox. Carlos Rodon, who's had an outstanding season, taking the mound for the White Sox. The pitching matchup isn't going to change because of this rainout. And the Astros, I think, are planning on still going with Jose Urquidy, who's also very good. But if the White Sox are swinging the bat the way they did in Game 3, and Rodon pitches as well as he has all season, they should at least be going to a Game 5.
Man, let's wait and see. Boy. Oh, by the way, all of this going on, let's catch up with the Rays Red Sox. Game 3 of the American League Divisional Series became an instant classic last night, Ian. We're going to need your help on this. Christian Vasquez's walk-off home run in the 13th gives the Red Sox the win in a 2-1 lead, in the best-of-5 series. But Ian, will anyone outside of Red Sox Nation talk about the ground rule double that may have cost Tampa Bay the game? Can you take us through this confusing rule? I didn't realize there was maybe a couple options for a ground rule double.
Yeah, so what happened in the 13th inning with the game tied 4-4, Kevin Kiermaier hit a drive to center field, and the Red Sox center fielder, Hunter Renfroe, looked like he was going to make a play on the ball, but he misjudged where the wall was. So the ball hit the wall, then bounced off Renfroe and went over the fence. So it was out of play. Now, the umpires ruled that it was a ground rule double. And that cost, as you said, that may have cost the Rays the game because it certainly cost them one run. Yandy Diaz would have scored, but he was moved back to third base. It may have cost them 2 runs because Kiermaier was between second and third when that ball went over the fence. He may have scored as well, but because it was a ground rule double, Diaz was moved back to third, Kiermaier was moved to second, and the Rays did not get a run. And then the Red Sox won it in the bottom of the 13th on Christian Vasquez's 2-run homer. So the rule is the umpires ruled this correctly. By the MLB rule book, this was indeed a ground rule double. The MLB talked to Fox Sports' Ken Rosenthal, and they said, quote, "A ball deflected by a player out of play is a ground rule double. The ball retains its status as a batted ball until it's fielded cleanly by a defensive player." So that's the same as if the ball had bounced naturally over the fence. Now, of course, the Rays and their fans are upset, saying it shouldn't have been an automatic ground rule double. You know, there should have been some umpire discretion, as we see, like in fan interference. If there's a ball hit down the foul line and somebody reaches out and gets the ball, they say, okay, the runners would have scored. So the umpire should have had that discretion here. But as the rule is in place now, the umpires called it right. It is a ground rule double. Now, some fans have also said, well, what's to stop a player from just taking the ball and chucking it into the stands if they don't think that they can throw a runner out? But the key here is that Renfroe didn't make a play on the ball. He didn't field it. It bounced off him. So this was a really fluky play. I don't know if this might be a situation where we're overreacting to something that happens so rarely that I don't know if the rule can really be changed. And even if the rule was changed, I don't know how else it could be ruled other than a ground rule double, unless you're saying, okay, the umpire should exercise discretion, but do you really want to open that up, giving umpires something else to interpret during an important game, a postseason game? I certainly get why the Rays are upset. They probably were robbed because of that rule. But I think the umpires called it correctly here, and I don't know how that rule should be changed, frankly.
And honestly, Ian, so let's just say that, just so fans understand, like, if that ball landed in his hand and then he tossed it into the Red Sox bullpen, that would have been considered a home run?
If he caught it and then chucked it into the stand, gosh, what would they? Yeah, I guess so. It would be like, like when the ball bounced, if the ball bounces off a glove, or when, years ago when it bounced off Jose Canseco's head. I guess that would be called a home run. I mean, this rule here doesn't.
It's confusing.
Yeah, it doesn't cover that exactly, but yeah, I guess it would be a home run, and that would certainly penalize or discourage a player from, again, just chucking it into the stands or kicking it under the wall or whatever, so it's out of play. But again, this was such a fluky play. I mean, if you saw it, it bounced off Renfroe. Renfroe, he did not intentionally bat it with his glove or kick it over the fence. This was just a weird play that really bit the Rays, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think some fans are going, well, wait a minute. It looked like he just did that on purpose, and that would mean, a home run, and there's a rule in there that says, if the player does do that, that if the ball, let's just say, if the ball didn't ricochet off of him into the bullpen, but rather, let's say it ricocheted on him and he grabbed it and just like tossed it back in, thinking it'd be a ground rule double. I think baseball says that would be a home run if it was intentional like that. And I think there were some fans out there thinking, well, that sure looked a little bit intentional there. But That's why we talk about these things the day after. Ian Castleberry joins the Wise Guys, our Major League Baseball update, of course, presented by Happy Hill Restaurant. And also, too, thanks to the D.C. Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines for bringing us Ian. All right, Ian, I have a sneaky feeling L.A. is going to close out the Giants at Dodger Stadium. Just a feeling, and I can see the Giants really hoping. Do you think they can escape from L.A. and force Game 5 in the Bay?
I think this does look in the Dodgers' favor here. I mean, certainly the Giants have played above expectations all season long, but going with Max Scherzer tonight in Game 3, that certainly looks to be the Dodgers' advantage. Scherzer pitching at home. Alex Wood going for the Giants. I know Scherzer hasn't been great in his past couple of starts, but you have to like the Dodgers' chances in that game. Now, Game 4, that might be a little more interesting from the Giants' standpoint, but the Dodgers are probably going to start Tony Gonsolin, and that might mean this is a situation where Gonsolin pitches, 2, maybe 3 innings, and then the bullpen takes over. So you have to think the Giants could have an advantage there, but the Dodgers' bullpen is very deep, as they showed in the wild card game. And the Giants also, they're countering with Anthony DeSclafani, who is not the Giants' top starter, and maybe that's somebody that the Dodgers could bat around if they get a chance. Justin Turner, he went hitless in the first 2 games of the series. Is that going to continue in games 3 or 4, or is he due for a breakout? One of the Dodgers' best postseason hitters. You figure he's due to turn it around. So I'm with you. I think the Dodgers are looking good here for games 3 and 4.
All right. Ian Castleberry with the Wise Guys. Of course, that series continues tonight and tomorrow night if there's a Game 5 Thursday in the Bay Area. Ian Castleberry with the Wise Guys on the D.C. Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines. And I know you're the baseball guy, but you're also the NFL guy. You're also a Lions fan. And Ian, while I'm doing this, let me just cue up my new age music. I did this for Womack earlier in the show, but Chris said he didn't need it after Alabama's loss. He's good there. But I know you Lions fans, I mean, the suffering runs deep. But here's an NFL question for you for your Lions. Despite being winless, do you seem to be good with how Dan Campbell, your first-year coach, is handling the team?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, I don't have all those championship trophies to, salve my wounds like Womack does with the Crimson Tide. So I'm sorry, Chris. I feel sorry for you. But, I mean, with the Lions, Dan Campbell, I'm sure a lot of fans raised an eyebrow at the fact that he was very emotional after the game. He was choked up. He was crying. He wiped away a couple of tears as he was talking because he was so upset and feeling for his players who just lost a really tough game. And this is the second game this season that the Lions have lost on a field goal as time expired. And even though they are 0-5, they've been competitive, and I'd argue in 4 of those 5 games, they are playing hard for Dan Campbell. And sure, you'd like to see them win some games, and eventually that's how Dan Campbell's going to be judged, on how many games he wins. But for now, for a rebuilding team, for a team that clearly doesn't have enough talent and is battling injuries, which every NFL team is battling injuries, but for a team that was already as depleted from a talent level as the Lions, to lose the 5, 6 important players that they have, to see them fight, and they should have beaten Minnesota. I mean, really, they had no business winning that game. I think if you're a Vikings fan, you have to criticize the way the Vikings played that game and leaving the Lions a chance to win that at the end. And they took the lead on a 2-point conversion. They could have kicked the extra point to tie. Dan Campbell says, no, we're going to win. We're going to go for the win. I don't want my defense to go through overtime. Him being aggressive and showing how much he cares for his players afterward. Again, the Lions are going to have to win more games, but for right now, I'll take a coach that shows that he cares that much, that is getting his guys to play hard for him.
Wow. That's well said, Ian Castleberry. One of these days, I'm going to bring Blades back on here, and we're going to talk about this. And, I mean, we're, Panthers fans. It's so funny, Ian. I was at the top of the show. I joined, is one of these that popped up on my feed. It's like, hey, would you like to join this? One of like 18,000 Panthers fan clubs. I'm like, yeah, I like this one. Seems pretty cool. I mean, I was on there for 10 days and I've already just unfollowed it because the fans are freaking out at we're 3-2. We've lost 2 in a row. And granted, we should be upset after that loss to Philadelphia, but it reminds me of Tosh Point oh, if folks remember that show on Comedy Central. And
Yes.
do you remember that he did a great spoof with the Lions fan, and basically the Giants fan, this Giants fan was whining and crying because they lost the playoffs, and the Lions fan's like, well, how many Super Bowls have you won in the last 20 years? And the guy's like, 2. And the Lions fan's like, blankety blank, F you. He's like, we were 0-16 last year. Like, I don't want to hear it. So you guys go through a lot, and yet you always manage to see the sunshine at the end of the day.
I try. I've tried to be healthy going into the season mentally and just say, they're going to lose a lot of games, and they still are. But again, I love seeing a guy up there who cares, who feels for his players, knows that was a tough loss. Compare that to 3 years of Matt Patricia, who goes up there and grumbles, basically saying that the players lost because they didn't execute his brilliant defensive strategy as it should have. To be emotionally invested and to live or die with the players. There's only going to go so far until the Lions' talent catches up. But again, give me a guy who cares.
Well, you got one for sure. So, hey, good luck to your people. We'll always be doing check-ins from time to time, just emotional, health checkups for you, buddy, because we're here for you.
I appreciate that.
Oh, of course, man. That's what friends do for one another. Ian, always appreciate your time, my friend. Here, I'll put down the new age music. I think we can be done with that for the day.